Hi there, Elevated Planet community. This is John Drew here from Elevated Planet.
And Jolie Gabrielle from Elevated Planet. And we want to thank you so much for joining us today, this Sunday. And today we have so much in store for you. So John is going to give us more about what we're going to have on topic for today.
Yep, thank you, Jolie. Yeah, part two. So basically, part one last week was to do with the Gregg Braden and Julie Reisler. So she was the one putting on the interview with Gregg, and it was a really deep interview. And what we're going to do is you're going to have access to the full interview on the newsletter that will go out either tonight or tomorrow. So last week we covered a variety of things. And again, part one will also be linked on the newsletter for anybody who didn't get to see it last week. You can catch up with that. But this is again a little bit more hard hitting this time around because we're going through Nos Populi because we always tended to be a little bit more sensitive on the Elevated Planet side of things. So we are going to really go under the Nos Populi, we the people banner at this point. So in part one, we covered this is things that Gregg was talking about. While war crimes and atrocities continue, are we being encouraged into normalcy bias? Which means treating the previously unacceptable as acceptable. And then the question was, what risks does this represent to humanity? We saw this in the Second World War. And again, this will be covered in part today as well, but it's an important one to be aware of. And then there was a lot of talk again around centralized control versus the freedoms that humanity should be allowed. So again, an important point with 40 westernized countries holding elections this year, which has never happened before. One of the things that Gregg has discovered, and we've been talking about this for years, the media show intentionally skewed events actually through news media typically, or various other forms of media. So what do we really know to be true? We have to be discerning. I think that is something. And he discovered this when he was in his hotel room, looking at the story from the 7th of October, I believe it was, when Hamas attacked in Israel. And he saw what the US version that went out, and he was in a hotel room in the UK at the time, showed a very distorted view from what the rest of the world was seeing. So how could people in the US respond appropriately when they have only been told a small portion of the story? And that, as we know, is typical. Also mentioned that the USA is involved in 22 wars around the world right now. How many of these are we aware of? Okay. I can't even begin to get anywhere close to that as far as my awareness goes. And again, events are being weaponized to divide us rather than draw humanity together. The indoctrination and the brainwashing is all out there. We don't realize these things. We think that life is the way we've been programmed and conditioned to believe it is. But once you start to wake up to the fact that actually, we have a lot more power than we've been encouraged to believe. And this is what the awakening and the remembering thing is all about. The great remembering is remembering how magnificent we are and that we can create a world of unspeakable beauty. We have it within our power to do so. And that is where we are heading. So there is the briefest of overviews of part one. And now, without further ado, we're going to leap straight into part two. So Gregg and Julie, we'll let you take it away.
Well, first of all, there is so much in what you just said, and I love that you went to the deep end of the spiritual pool. And these are the questions that I've been getting from our beautiful listeners, my own soul. And I think this where I felt the lighting up is, this archaic world, the past traumas and the new world emerging, and kind of how do we, I know anybody watching or listening right now, like attracts like, is here because they want to come, you want to come from love. You want to come from healing. You want to come from, makes me want to cry. Even just saying it, I can feel it. Being a part of something better, more beautiful, more loving. I think of your book about the divine matrix. And to me, it's like, I literally read and like submerge myself in that daily because I just love to be reminded that there's something greater that's loving, that is in every cell and atom and every aspect of who we are. And so what I'm hearing or sensing, it's like, how do we, and I don't mean this in a Pollyanna way, but like, how do we dive into that responding from love, knowing this is what's going on, creating that new world, and also being aware that we're being fed a lot of fear and a lot of, as you said, meant to be vulnerable.
Well, I think, again, I don't think there's a single answer or a single solution. I think there are many answers. However, people are feeling drawn to respond that's their choice. I think where the spirituality comes is being conscious of what drives that response. Am I responding because I'm afraid of the world if I don't, or what will happen to me if I don't? Or I'll just be very honest. When October 7th happened, I looked to our spiritual community, and you could hear a pin drop in the room because our spiritual leaders were absent en masse. And I've called some of them and I've talked to them. I'm said, where are you guys? Your community needs you to help them navigate what's happening here. Some of them have found that their teachings are shallow teachings. They're not bad and they're not wrong. They are just shallow. They're good time spirituality. And it's easy to be a spiritual person when the world looks rosy and rainbows. When something crosses your path, if your spiritual practice does not serve you, you have to ask, why is that? And what can I do to embrace a deeper spirituality? And some I know people that are struggling because their teachings are not serving their community in the face of what we're seeing happening in the world. It's a hard conversation, Julie, and it's very honest. It's a very honest conversation. Some of the spiritual teachers said they just can't see it. They said, I can't watch this. It's too hard. I talked to somebody that says, I'm just going to go to the beach and do my yoga. I can't deal with it. And we all feel like that sometimes. We have to take a break. But we're blessed to have a beach to go to do our spiritual practice. And some of our brothers and sisters are just trying to make it through the day. And there are a lot of people in our community that are afraid to say anything because they're going to lose clicks on YouTube. They're going to have people unsubscribe. They know they're going to catch flack, and they don't want that flack. So they're just not saying anything. And all of those are choices. I'm not saying they're right, wrong, good, or bad. What I'm saying is we're a family and we're going through something, and we need one another, and we need one another's guidance and teachings and experience. And there isn't a single answer. I think there are many, many possibilities because we all learn differently. So I think what's really important for me, and it's my test, because I'm right there with you, and I'm right there with our community. When I hear something or I see something and somebody tells me, or it's on a video somebody sends me, or something like that, when I feel that primal gut response that makes me want to lash out, I have to ask myself, where's that coming from? Number one. And we all have an inner warrior, and it's there for a reason. I don't think it's just about complacency. I don't think it's just about turning the other cheek. We have to act sometimes. When we fail to act early on, when the signs of, in this case, evil are apparent, and we normalize that evil, then it becomes greater and greater and greater until the point where we have to act. We all saw this in World War II. If we had not acted as allies in the West, and we'd allowed Hitler to continue his conquest, we would live in a very different world today. So we had to act. So again, it's not that we need to not act, but on a spiritual level, what's compelling us to act? We'll get through this, and there will be a time you and I have this conversation. All of this is in the rearview mirror. It's all already happened. The question is, what have we become? What kind of people have we become when this is over? And we have the opportunity now to become conscious and ask that question, consciously aware of what we're doing. And I know people that are reduced to the most primal, instinctive levels of pure revenge and hate, and they're allowing the hate to consume them. So hate has a chemical consequence. It kicks up the stress hormones in the body, high levels of cortisol, high levels of adrenaline that last day after day after day, not just for a short period of time. It becomes the filter, the lens through which they see all the events in life and all the events in the world. And they begin to lump categories of people together, and that hate begins to define other categories of people that have nothing to do with what's happening in the Middle East. I'm seeing that happen right now. And this is a spiritual exercise. Do we allow ourselves to succumb to that? Or can we draw a line and say we will not tolerate this level of evil because we love our world, we love our children, we love our future, and we love ourselves enough to draw the line and say this cannot be tolerated? What does it take? Now, what does it take to follow up, to make it clear that that evil cannot exist? So I don't know if any of that makes any sense. It's up for me as well, for a lot of reasons. I was supposed to be leading a group in Israel in November. This happened October 7th. And of course, I knew that we wouldn't be there in November. But all of our guides, our Palestinian guides, they text me, they're afraid. They think everybody's mad at them and people don't like them, and they want to take them off the face of the earth. And my Israeli friends, they don't know. They said, we don't know where this is going to go. We don't know what to do. This isn't us. This isn't what we want. Yet it's happening. And there's a lot of people in the world that want something more than this. So I think we're all being, I don't think it's a test. I think it's an opportunity to demonstrate our mastery in the world of what we choose and what we claim to be true in our hearts. People go around all the time, talking about how loving and spiritual and, everything else they are, and they probably are. Now the world has brought to our doorstep an opportunity to demonstrate the mastery of what we've claimed to be true. How do we implement that? And this is where everybody learns differently. So we have lots of different ways to respond to what we're seeing in the world.
So just to discuss that very briefly, as Julie was saying at the outset, we are being fed a diet of fear through the media, right? And again, this is an intentional thing. This is something we come to realize, is that, we're not given a balanced view of reality. But certainly there are things going out there that we will not be comfortable with. And this is where it leads to this normalcy bias kind of thing, where we're encouraged to accept the unacceptable and move the point of acceptability, and then keep moving it and moving it and moving it. But you can't do that because, again, like the Second World War, people accepted atrocities for a while until they realized they had to step in and do something. We will reach the same point here. So that's something that we have to be aware of. But again, this is the thing that Gregg said, is about being conscious of our response. And consciousness is really important, because going back to the Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh, one of the things that was said there was that consciousness is everything. Group consciousness is incredibly powerful and creates outcomes of unspeakable beauty or ugliness. So we have a choice here, but we have to ask ourselves, our response, is it driven out of fear, anger, hatred, or is it love? These are two opposite ends of the same spectrum, if you like. But if you can catch yourself and you can kind of work it out for yourself, because one of the things that Gregg said again is that he has people around him who are consumed by anger and the need for revenge and hatred. And it does create those stress hormones, high levels of cortisol, high adrenaline. And this is what people live with. When you get stuck in that way of thinking, then you start to group people together as if everyone's to blame that falls under that banner. And when I think you think of looking at, say, for instance, if you look at the Middle East situation, whether it's the Israelis or whether it's the Palestinians, there's so many people there who are completely innocent. They don't want this. So you can't point the finger and say they're to blame. There's something interesting going on here. We've talked about the fact that 2024 is going to be a year unlike any other, that this is going to be a year where we get tested. This spirituality thing that we talk about, this is where it does get more challenging because it's not all rainbows and unicorns. We can't all go and do yoga on the beach. We have to step up. And what are you going to do? Because, this does bring the inner warrior into play here. But it's not about fighting in that conventional kinetic sense. This is about something deeper. This is about realizing the power that we have to create the world of unspeakable beauty that we talked about. And it's interesting, actually, because just yesterday, I was at a seminar with a gentleman called Rory Duff, who we featured earlier this month. And he is all about group consciousness and elevating consciousness and helping to raise the frequency of energy. And there's more to come from Rory as well, to start to pull these things together in a way that is going to be amazingly effective, that can help us reach that world of unspeakable beauty. And we're going to do this. And the second half of 2024 is going to see that movement really pressing ahead. So you can watch this space for that. Jolie, what would you care to add?
I just wanted to say that, especially in this situation, when we're talking about spirituality and connection, and Gregg Braden, he's all about the heart, and really stopping the intellectualization, is that even a word, of spirituality, and beginning to feel, touch, touch grass, as they say, go out in nature and really experience and be what we're speaking of, instead of just, kind of looking at it from the outside looking in, or it's where the rubber meets the road. Every single day, if you can manage to love yourself enough to bring joy to others, that energy reverberates. And I get, like she said, we can't be all Pollyanna about this, but at the same time, the negativity and the hate is part of the problem. So if we can learn to fix that within ourselves, and that's not something to intellectualize, it's like you empathize with somebody, you empathize with a culture, a way of life, a people, or this or that, in order to really begin to understand what it means to be spiritual, to be loving, to be compassionate.
Yeah.
It's always an inside job that starts with us. But at the same time, just know that when you start to try and think, take that stairway down to the heart and see how it's making you feel and others feel around you. And it's the warmth you're going for.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. And of course, that Bruce Lipton piece that we did, just that 1 minute piece just a few weeks ago, talking about how the stress, the hatred, the anger, how it actually kills your cellular development, right? It is very damaging. It causes disease. And so, even despite the fact we don't want to get caught in those emotions at the same time, it's actually physically damaging to our cellular regeneration as well. But thank you. We'll leap on now to the second part of part 2. So here we go.
Are your other guests talking about this much, Julie? And if so, where do they come from on it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Some, yes, and it's interesting. Yes, and more generally, what actually just came to mind as you were speaking, number one is seeing this from a macro perspective of polarities. I think that's really helpful. What also came to mind, I had a friend who started, I think she did documentaries, but she had started an organization called Seeds for Peace. And it had Palestinians and Israelis, because we were talking about the Middle East. I'm like synthesizing and really sitting with how, what actually, for those I know listening, we want to, I don't want to speak for everyone. How do I come from love and do something that's going to actually create a new world that honors our family and love and good?
Well, now that goes to the deeper question, this fundamental battle between good and evil. People often think of a battle in terms of winning and losing. And if you think of a battle on that level, you're part of the problem. Because the idea of winning and losing is what keeps us stuck in the ancient trap of that polarity rather than winning, we have the opportunity to triumph, to transcend. That means to become more than the battle itself. How do you do that? If the battle between good and evil is to prevent us from celebrating our humanness, and ultimately that's what the battle is all about, then we triumph by doing just that, celebrating and living the deep truth of what it means to be human every day of our lives, by living the best version of ourselves, by loving without fear of the consequences of that love, sharing without fear our imagination, our creativity, the joy that we know is possible from the things that we envision and bring to fruition and create in this life. It can be art, it can be music, it can be community, it can be growing a garden, it can be creating a peace in a community, because there are forces out there that are pushing for just the opposite. Forces out there right now, politically, that are pushing us centralized community rather than localized community. They want centralized everything, centralized banking. They want centralized. They're pushing. They're discouraging rural living because they don't want people to be self-sufficient. They want people in what are called 15-minute cities. And there are some model cities that have been built in Saudi Arabia right now. They're some of the first places in the middle of the desert. And they're not places that I would want to live in, where everyone lives the same and innovation and creativity is discouraged. Everyone is dependent upon a centralized authority for food, for water, for their existence. That flies in the face of human nature, of human sovereignty, of human freedom. And this is where these ideas, there's a fine line between the ideas themselves and the spiritual implementation. And then the politics come in, Julie, because they're creating the policies and the laws that determine how we live our lives, or how limited and how much our lives are limited. So if you look closely, you don't even have to look at every one. Just look at the principles that are being proposed right now. Do they foster freedom, sovereignty, and creativity, or do they foster control, contraction, and homogenization, everything being the same? And the answer to that question for you, or whoever's asking the question, will tell you where those policies are going. And they're being driven largely by people that we never elected to represent us. Unelected people in organizations. UN is part of that. Not the whole UN. There are good people and good policies in the UN, but there's a part of the UN that is not like the UN used to be, United Nations. And they are full steam ahead on what are called the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals they want to meet in 6 years by the year 2030. The only way, the goals are beautiful, Julie. If you go to the website and you read the goals at face value, who wouldn't want those goals? Like end poverty, end disease in the world. I mean, who doesn't want that? Now you read the fine print. How will they accomplish those goals? It is horrendous. It's not the world I want to live in. It sounds like a world out of 1984, a world where everything is digitized, everything is controlled, people are digitized. We lose the opportunity for self-expression, creativity, imagination, compromise a lot of our sovereignty to accomplish those goals. And it's a lot of people don't even know that it's happening to us, and a lot of people don't even know that these things are out there. So this is an example of where deeply spiritual principles are being challenged by policies that determine how we live our lives and how our children live their lives, and our ability to share and instill within our children values that we cherish, but those values don't fit into this vision. So when we live the best version of ourselves, what we're doing is what Buckminster Fuller said so beautifully before he he passed in the early 1980s. He said, you're never going to change the world by fighting against the things you don't like. He said, you want a new world? He said, find a new way that makes the old way obsolete. People will follow the new way and the old way will collapse. The new way is to live the best version of ourselves, the deep truth of what it means to be human, and to celebrate that, because those are the qualities that are being challenged, and some people want to defeat those qualities. They don't like, this is another conversation on what's called the transhuman movement. Trans means beyond. The movement to replace our biology with technology that steals from us our humanness. And there's a place for transhumanism in our lives. There are beautiful technology that's being developed. For example, this is in the news today, so we can talk about this. There is, FDA has approved a computer chip to be placed into the human brain that allows us to communicate with our computer with no cables. You can communicate with your keyboard, no cables. Young people say, man, that's sweet. I can do my games with no cables. I can do the games with my mind. What's wrong with that? The flip side, and whether we're talking about computer chips in the brain, chemicals in the blood, replacing our immune system, sensors under the skin, replacing our senses, is that the way the human body is made, Julie, is that our uniqueness, our abilities begin to atrophy when they're not used.
There we go. That concludes that with Gregg for now. But I wanted to start off with Janet again, who's given us another post here to say, I have to avoid the media. It does upset me. So I share positive posts, check in with my friends and make sure they're okay and recharge myself in my garden. And I do love that because, the grounding is so important. But also, I'm totally get the fact that it is difficult to see the stuff that's going on in the media, particularly when you realize how distorted it is, and it's supposed to drive you towards fear. So just ask yourself the question all the time, how much of the truth are you really seeing? Is it designed to drag you down? And as Janet's example there is making sure that you don't get dragged down, to make sure that you keep it within your community, the people that you can affect positively, and putting the positive messages out there, then, you're putting an energy out there which is counterbalancing negativity. So, yeah, thank you, Janet. That's really important. One of the points that Gregg mentions there at the outset is the battle. It's the winning and losing polarity trap. We're brought up to think of life as a competition. Whether it's sports, whether it's jobs or anything, we're in competition with each other. And that's how we're programmed and conditioned to see the world. The reality is it doesn't have to be that way. What we're really seeking is win-win for our community. And once you come back to that universal law of oneness, once you realize that there is a unity between everyone, this is about transcending that polarity trap and, celebrating our humanness, living the best version of ourselves. I think these are all things that are very important. And again, coming back to love, we're all created differently for a reason. We can't be all homogenized into a lump and told, like with this 15-minute city kind of idea. And I must admit, one of our community, Mike, he sent me something on this going back probably a year and a half ago. And I've seen evidence of this even locally to where I am, where there are plans that they want to implement a 15-minute city. I can't believe it'll ever go ahead. I honestly can't, because I think that is taking normalcy bias too far. People will rally against this because you can't be told that you've got to live your life within a certain confined geography and you need permission to step outside of that zone. That is not the world of freedom, of sovereignty that a vast majority of people are looking for. So, but again, this is all here to challenge us and to challenge how we are going to find a solution to this together. And it was interesting, actually, because what he was saying also rang a bell with me when he was talking about, making us dependent rather than having that sovereignty and the freedom. And there's a digitization, whether it's the transhumanism or other versions of the digitization. You know what? If you go back to Nostradamus, when he was talking about the time of troubles and the Antichrist, and this is the final conflict, if you like, this was very much what he was talking about. And that was, over 400 years ago, that he was foreseeing a time when people get digitized and then they lose all control. Because if you refuse that, you cannot buy things, you cannot do anything. So you become super reliant. This is when it comes back to community. So I think, again, just an awareness point. I think this is where those who really don't want freedom for the people are going to be pushing. And, that's our job, to find a way of resisting that and putting forward, as Buckminster Fuller said. And I think this was very interesting, actually, because Buckminster Fuller, from back in the 1980s, he was talking about the fact that we need to find a new way that makes the old way obsolete. And what's interesting about that, of course, as our mission statement as Elevated Planet have the Socrates quote, which is, "The secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new." So that was the original version of what Buckminster Fuller said. So this is what it's all about. Totally in agreement with that. And it makes it exciting. This idea of 1984, George Orwell, being revisited, it does have that dystopian kind of feel to it. And transhumanism was something that Aveen Murray over in Ireland, and she's an amazing healer, she mentioned about the risks of transhumanism and how the dark forces can use this to control. So, don't get drawn into there is a positive side to transhumanism. People can have their lives improved through this. But there are also plenty of ways in which they can control people and enslave them effectively. So we don't want to go too far down that route. We've got to be, again, very discerning about where we want this to go. So, okay, well, on having said that, I'm going to ask Jolie to step in. What do you think, Jolie?
Well, before we get into the meditation, I think you really summed it up nicely, but I would like to offer you, me, and all of the people who are listening and watching a quick theta healing program for the difference between triumph and winning, and triumph and loss, as well as the difference between, positive teaching healing, negative teaching healing for those as well, along with the difference between human transformation and transhumanism. So if you take a deep breath in, close your eyes, say yes, from much love and creator perspective, understanding, and definition. I want to offer you a positive teaching healing, negative teaching healing, trauma teaching healing for divine triumph, making yours the same. I'd also like to have the creator teach the difference between triumph and winning, and triumph and loss in the highest and best way with grace and ease. Thank you, it is done, and so it is. And from creator's perspective, understanding and definition, and with full humility, I'd like to teach you positive teaching healing, negative teaching healing, trauma teaching healing for divine human transformation, making yours the same, and the difference between human transformation and transhumanism in the highest and best way with grace and ease. All of us know the difference. Thank you, it is done, and so it is.
Very nice. So, okay, well, that's wonderful. Are we okay to go to the meditation at this point, Jolie?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, right. So what we're going to do this week, we are going to do something slightly different. We're going to finish with the meditation. So when the meditation finishes, then that will be the end of this particular broadcast. And I want to say thank you to the community for tuning in today. And as always, if you have any questions for myself or Jolie, by all means, send them through me, John Drew at elevatedplanet.life, or you can find us on the elevatedplanet.life website where we have a contact page. Happy to answer your questions, any thoughts, any considerations that you want to put our way. Absolutely, please do reach out. So with that said, thank you, everybody. And thank you again, Jolie. And we are going to go to the meditation.
As always, it's truly a blessing to be here. And so we begin with the breath, the life that we have been given from the divine. So let's go ahead and slow that down and command our heartbeat to sync up with our breath. As we then bring our awareness to between our sit bones and ground our energy, you want to clean off your grounding cord and let that happen as you blanket the inside and the outside of your grounding cord. Go ahead and do it while the grounding cord's being created, and root yourself. Pull in your aura layer to be 1.5 feet around you. Call your higher self to a comfortable distance above your head and snap in that astral body. We're going to go ahead and run 15% earth energy by opening the bottoms of our feet like we would the lens of a camera, letting that beautiful earth essence of water, air, fire, crystal, rope, tree trunk, earth, light, whatever it is that resonates with you, lava, fire, go ahead and allow for that to pool in the feet and move up the side channels of the legs as you open your crown like you would the lens of a camera, and allow for that beautiful golden cosmic life force energy to cascade down, filling up all the folds within the brain, allowing for you to create new pathways, ones that support you, connecting that brain with that heart and that higher self, all in alignment with you. And right here, as this energy begins to fill us up like water fills up a cup, with your permission, say yes if you want it. I'd like to give you, from Creator's perspective, understanding, and definition. It's commanded that you align back with your true core beliefs and have the heart to manifest them and set clear boundaries going forward. And any trauma from those experiences be resolved and dissolved. Send down that grounding cord. Thank you, it is done, and so it is. So now, anywhere in our body that there is normalcy, balance, it cannot maintain the vibration as we bring in that earth and that beautiful cosmic life force energy. So let's go ahead and out that program, that pattern, and wherever it is holding itself in our bodies, we're going to go ahead and remove and resolve that pattern, program, vow, contract, agreement, or other obligation, resolving and dissolving it on a history level. And we're going to send it to Creator's light and replace it with unconditional love for others and self and unconditional forgiveness. As we move out, first we turn a bright yellow, any of that normalcy bias that is sitting in our cells and in our muscles and in our body. And we send that beautiful earth energy and that cosmic gold light to go ahead and flush that down our grounding cord, putting a golden sun above our head, and we bring that down. Just listen to my words. Just close your eyes and breathe. Your higher self is taking everything in. We're doing a lightning rod healing right now. So just breathe with the rhythm of your body. Say yes. Allow the permission for this healing to take hold in the highest and best way, with grace and ease, letting the light in. It is safe for you to align with your unique energy signature, and you have the courage to be seen. So now we're going to have a positive teaching healing, negative teaching healing, trauma teaching healing, making it safe for us to be seen. That's bundled in that positive teaching healing, but in the perspective, understanding, and definition of the Creator, to have that positive attention be shined upon us, knowing that we are safe to say, hey, this is incorrect, whether it is verbally or with our actions, knowing that we are creating a support system around us that also sits in their unique energy signature. And it is safe for them to raise up and rise up. Allow that heart and that brain to connect, to be seen, and to allow that energy, that positive energy, to reverberate out into the universe in the highest and best way, with grace and ease. Thank you, it is done, and so it is. Take a deep breath in. And now we're going to do a positive teaching healing, negative teaching healing, trauma teaching healing, as this earth energy and this cosmic gold life force energy move throughout our body, turning every cell in our bodies heart-shaped as we fill up all the space within with divine guidance from our higher self and divine. But we know our unique energy signature sits inside of all of the space within these heart-shaped cells and atoms, pulsating love throughout our system, moving out the hatred, moving out the anger, the jealousy, and most definitely the fear, moving in the love, the unconditional love, the forgiveness, opening ourselves up to be guided divinely by the light of divine creator. Take a deep breath in, exhale. Feel all of this beautiful energy moving throughout your body as you focus and concentrate on your goals. That divine energy signature that has you in a state of joy, unconditional love, financial prosperity, abundance, and you are safe receiving the positive attention that allows for you to build, not only for yourself, but your environment in the highest and best way with grace and ease. And we are also going to, with your permission, please say yes if you want it. Positive teaching healing, negative teaching healing, trauma teaching healing, bringing in the universal law of polarity. All of us know what it looks like, feels like, sounds like, and acts like. This is bundled in that positive teaching healing. To have the law of polarity fill up that space, to lock in with that unconditional love and forgiveness that's in those heart-shaped cells that are making up every part of us, locking in, bringing into harmony the extremes that we may be experiencing, from anger to love, right? How do we create a harmony and a focus so that we know a practice? We create a practice that allows us to release, but at the same time fill up. Let's open up to the possibilities of what that is and allow for our intuition to guide us into that understanding of what our practice is, our unique energy signature practice that allows us to release depression, anxiety, fear, and fill up with divine life force energy and action and execution of that light and those messages that come down and through us, creating a harmony and that law of polarity. Last but not least, as we breathe in and exhale and know that our heart is in rhythm with our breathing and our brain, all of our chakras are in alignment. We're running this 15% earth energy, this 85% cosmic gold, knowing that 15% is a color that resonates with you. You're rooted and grounded into Mother Earth in the present moment. Your higher self sits at a comfortable distance above you. Your astral body is snapped in, and your aura layer is 1.5 feet around you. Take a deep breath in as we do a positive teaching healing, negative teaching healing, trauma teaching healing with your permission. Say yes. To reconnect all of the social bonds that we may have lost, so that our unique social bonds can all begin to bring in more light, to bring in more love, and to allow for that energy, like I said again, hold the space for that love to reverberate out into the universe, and that peace within you be an energy signature that magnetizes that energy around you as well. And we ask that those primal instincts be guided by the highest part of us in the highest and best way with grace and ease. So that limbic system of the brain be guided by the higher self and the love of the heart, sandwiched between both. So that ego knows that it takes its directives from the higher self in the highest and best way with grace and ease. Thank you. It is done, and so it is. Take a deep breath in. I'd like you to close those feet chakras like you would the lens of a camera, along with the crown. Allow for that energy to settle as you stay rooted and grounded into Mother Earth. Take a deep breath in, exhale, and hold the space for love, peace, and unconditional joy, which leads to what? Unspeakable beauty. Thank you. It is done, and so it is. And you may open your eyes.